Dr. Travis Thompson, we had a conversation not too long ago about transgenderism and the treatment that's available. Is it treatment? Can we call it treatment? Is there help, hope? Do people need help or hope if they are identifying as something other than what they were born? And I came away from that great conversation with more questions. So we're back to talk about those additional questions. You said if somebody comes in your office and says, I am a female, or I've been a female for 58 years, but I've been trapped in a man's body for 58 years, and you can't say, are you sure? As a clinician, what can you say to me?
I can technically say whatever I want.
Sure.
Just to be clear. But what I would usually lead with is, okay, why are you here? If you think that's the truth, why are you here? If you're looking for someone to sign off on something, I'm not that person. I don't do that for anything. I've had people ask me, can you write me a letter for an emotional support animal? No. Can you write me a letter for this or for that? No, I don't do that. I don't think it's necessary. So I would ask, why are you here? And if they say, I want to accept this identity, and they're still interested in talking to me, I would ask, what does that give to you to be able to accept that? What is this supporting or trying to fill for you? If it's just, I just want to accept it as a label. Okay, why are you here? If you've come to therapy and you're not looking for a quick sign off, I think that's something that I would be able to work with. Now, one of the interesting things is I don't necessarily consider this a specialty, but nobody else is saying anything, and I'm arrogant enough to be honest. So, arrogant, tongue-in-cheek, but like, if nobody's going to say anything, nobody's going to do anything, I would rather explore it with somebody than wait for the perfect therapist to come along, if that makes sense. So if somebody comes in and says, I feel this way, okay, what does it do for you? And that's not targeted at anybody who identifies as transgender. I do that with everything.
Sure.
Yeah.
Any subject matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know if you have clients who do this or not, but if someone were to come in and they were to say, I'm here because I feel like I am a man trapped in a woman's body. However, my religious upbringing, my morality, my predominant worldview is in tension with the way that I feel. Is that something you can work with? If so, what does that potentially look like? Because I would imagine that there are a lot of people who feel one way and they feel like this is their identity, yet their faith or something is in tension with that. So how would you help somebody who's living in tension?
I want you to pay attention to how you worded that question, because that was an external locus of control. That's what we talk about in the field of psychology. It's external factors dictating how you feel. That would be one of the first things I point out of why is it that your sense of identity is influenced by the world around you? Now, it always is to some degree.
Sure.
But you're telling me this very core part of yourself is dictated by other people. In psychology, what we really want to do in therapy is understand you, not how other people should or have to view you. We want to understand you. I do a lot of psychodynamic work. I get to how you got to the place you are, why you are that way, what part of your childhood, adolescence, young adulthood led you there, right? So if somebody wants to look at it that way, I would say, okay, why do you push against the world so much? Stereotypically, I mean, if we're going to go the psychodynamic route, it's you rejected or didn't accept the father role, maybe because you didn't want to or because he wasn't a good example. And so you find your father in the world around you and reject him. That would be a deep therapeutic psychological approach, as opposed to, well, how do we make these outside people's voices not so loud? I don't know if that entirely qualifies as therapy, if I'm being honest.
So if you say no, I'm not gonna go there with you, and I wanted a quick sign off, and I go find another therapist that will give me the quick sign off. What is the current standard in clinical work if somebody comes in and says, I'm transgender, I want to go ahead and have surgery? Is there anything that clinician's going to walk me through before they say, oh, sure, go ahead?
Not really.
Really, I can just go and...
So the two biggest gateways for this, one is Planned Parenthood for puberty blockers. You can just show up.
Any age?
Yeah. I mean, they were doing it under the table, and we have evidence of that, actually. But you can just kind of show up. For therapists, it's actually pretty common, and you can see this in advertisements for Psychology Today if you ever get the hankering too. You can do it in one session. Some therapists will feign that it's a session and really just make sure you fit criteria, which don't even get me started on the criteria for gender dysphoria. It's a mangled mess to get the approval for surgery. The threshold it's almost like it doesn't even exist, to be honest.
So there's no qualification. Like if I just come in and say, I'm going to do this, and the clinician likely will say, okay, let me sign the paper for you.
I mean, they'll ask some questions, but there's no scientific rigor to it.
Oh.
Wow. Okay. So
it's big surgery for no scientific.
Yeah, that's a huge surgery. And, as a parent, and at this stage of life, I hear these things. I'm like, okay, so this is a struggle or an issue that like I really can't identify with. And I pray that my kids will never identify with, but, we don't live under a rock. I know that there are people who are watching this, who are listening to this, who maybe have kids that are going through this, or their kids' friends, or maybe their nieces and their nephews are, they're walking this out right now. If this is where the psychology world is at and where the medical world is at, and this is like, how would you encourage people who care about their loved ones, who understand how potentially scary this really is, the long-term implications for the people that they love, how would you encourage us to talk to those people that we love, where hopefully we can keep a connection, speak truth, and not burn a bridge, express to them, show them that we love them, but man, what you're doing is scary.
One of the best preventative things you can do is monitor social groups and heavily restrict social media. Because by the time a child has come up and said, I'm trans, they've been sifting through different friendship dynamics, going through social media for a while. So quite frankly, as a parent, if a kid has said that, they've already been doing it for a while. It's too late to prevent it, right? Some of the things that parents can do if we're thinking from a psychodynamic lens, a lot of these kids need intact, emotionally present, and strong fathers. They also need mothers who care about them and will also let them experience pain.
Let's slow down on that one as a mother who may or may not have protected children through the years. So my kids are grown, and through the years, especially one in particular, I can think of times where I would try to protect in order to allow that child to make a better choice. And I remember one time thinking, I'm just protecting the child. And the Lord said to me, and you're protecting that child from me as well. Like, you're not letting me work. And unfortunately, I still thought, yes, but I'm still doing the right thing. And I had to repent, and the Lord and I dealt with that. However, we do think we're doing the right thing as a parent. What do you mean that a mom or a dad needs to let the child experience pain? Walk that out a minute.
As a culture, we have completely avoided the concept of suffering. And if you do not learn to suffer well early, you will refuse to do it later on in life. For children, suffering doesn't mean that they get beat. I'm not saying you incite suffering on your child.
Right.
But you have to let them experience inner turmoil and not fix it. You offer them ways to deal with it, but you don't rob them of the opportunity to grow. So for our daughter, one of the things that we do is we have this, because both of her parents are counselors to some degree, we have a calm down corner with coping skills toys. And when she's overwhelmed and doesn't want to talk to us, we open a door and she comes to her calm down corner with all her toys. We don't remove the suffering from her. We actually encourage her, hey, you have to cope and deal through it. And I work with this with teenagers, the ones that are really rebellious. Most of the time, they've been protected from having to experience consequence. Like they get in trouble at school, parents cover for them.
Yeah.
They refuse to do work, they somehow pass. I just don't know how that happens. I mean, I even saw a report. There were a whole bunch of schools in Chicago who had a 0% literacy rate and like an 80% graduation rate.
Math doesn't seem to work.
Right. So we've created this entire culture of you cannot experience suffering or loss in any capacity. And so you raise these emotionally inept children. I bring that all up as an overview to parents to say, everyone suffers. Welcome to life. Would you rather them learn it early so they can cope later? Or would you rather them be hit by a truck of suffering and have no way to deal with it?
So we want our kids to obviously learn early, right? And so I'm just thinking of the parent who is watching their kids, could be some point in elementary school, maybe middle school, junior high age, and it seems as if they are now starting to run with kids who are showing tendencies that, man, this is something that we think is cool. Identifying as gay or transgender or whatever they're identifying, but in a way that, you know, a Christian would say, yeah, that's not the way God would have you identify. So if we see our kids starting to run in those circles, if we see them starting to maybe ask questions, you know, how would you encourage a parent to begin to have conversations with their kids? Because you're not talking about theory anymore.
Right.
We're talking about people. We're talking about people that they're friends with, that they care about, that they think are cool. And so help us take it from this world of theory to practicality.
One of the verses that came to mind as you were talking about that is, train your child up in the ways of the Lord, and in their days he will not depart from it. Okay. Also, we know psychologically kids rebel. They flex these relational muscles to figure out where the boundaries are at. The first conversation doesn't need to be between parents and kids. It needs to be parents with each other. How well do we know our kid? And do we think this is a full-grown change, or is this an attempt to find something different? I lean on a lot of parents' discernment to say, is this your kid or not? Because if it is, we've got some bigger issues. If this really isn't, you're not just rejecting that your kid has changed, but if this really isn't your kid, you slow down and you help them think through it. Okay, you're thinking about this. What happens next? Okay, you get the hormones. Do you know what happens when you get those? By the way that kids get hormones is insurance fraud, in case you were interested. So is this what you want? Because this is what happens next. Eventually, some parents need to come to a hard stopgap of, hey, this is what we're going to accept and this isn't. And you plant seeds that you hope will grow 5 years later. Because that's one of the things that we have seen with parents, and some of these detransitioners have talked about this, is their parents held the line and they rejected their parents. You're stupid. You don't know what's going on. And then all of a sudden, when they start working on detransition, they go back and say, my parents were right the whole time. But this has to start early. If you're not engaged with your children, if you're not teaching them, if you're not raising them in the way they should go, especially parents, if you're not working on your own stuff, it's going to come out with the kids.
And I think, you know, we're looking at this subject of transgenderism and trying to figure out how to help and solve or walk with, yet what I'm hearing you saying is parents, we've got to start way before middle, high school. And in some generations that are still alive and kicking, that makes perfect sense because that's the way we were raised. That's the way we've raised our children. There's a next generation coming up, though, that I'm understanding in that we're handing the phone to the child earlier. We're checking out our own selves and we're not dealing with our own stuff. How do we sound the alarm loud enough to where people start to go, oh, wait, no, that is me, that I don't deal with my stuff. And I did hand the entertainment to my child so they would be quiet for a minute.
Data isn't as convincing as a lot of people think. So I could run out the data, no matter the political aisle. Everybody hates data way more than they want to admit. For a lot of those parents, I think one of the really great books is The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. Wonderful book that explains some of this. I'll push back on one thing, though, because the generation raising parents was raised by someone. They didn't get this overly permissive thing out of nowhere.
Sure.
So one of the, I think it has some legs to this theory, is that the older generation went through a level of hardship and said, well, my kid's going to have better. And they didn't put guardrails on it. And that's where you get the participation trophy thing from, right?
Right.
Well, then the generation of participation trophies then raised children.
Yes.
Right. So this isn't well, these parents just suck. Okay. Well, somebody raised them. And also we can think culture as well. So this isn't well, let's work on some skills. Quite honestly, if anybody's listening and they say my child needs therapy, good family therapists, particularly child therapists, will mostly do therapy on you.
Or family therapy.
Yeah. With especially little kids, like my kid's crazy. It's probably your fault.
What every parent wants to hear.
Yeah.
It just is. I mean, my wife's school counselor. She has the rebellious or bad kids. And then parents walk in the room and she goes, okay.
I get it now.
I get it, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of parents don't want to admit that that's them. And I get that.
Sure.
100%. I have empathy for that. But all good child therapy mostly includes the parent. And that's for good reason.
Yeah, no, that's good. I think of the parent who hears a conversation like this. They do hear some of the statistics. They do hear some of the scary stories. And they're like, I need to make sure that my kid is not going to go down this path. And so I think that having the conversations are great, but kids also go through stages where they are just naturally curious about their bodies and about change and about the other gender and whatever. And so there's an element of curiosity that just comes with being human.
Sure.
And so what do you think is, just kind of normal kid stuff that probably every single one of us went through and then like, here are the red flags.
Sure.
This is normal. This is something that your radar better be up.
Like when my 3-year-old son at the time said, I want to wear girls' clothes because they're brighter colors. Boys' clothes are boring. And I was like, because he had a point.
Yeah.
But I didn't want him dressing in dresses.
Sure.
So, yeah, it's that kind of thing. They're curious. He likes brighter colors. He's an artist.
Some of that is discernment and knowing good developmental psychology. Little kids like to play pretend.
Yeah.
Okay, that's just kind of how kids learn to understand the world. You see that, again, child therapy is mostly play involved with the parents. So kids will play as a part of their processing, right? So some of this just needs to be good developmental work. Some of the other things includes, and this is where it gets a little uncomfortable for people, there's a rule in therapy, especially adolescent and child therapy. We say if you're going to talk to your kids about sex, 8 is too late.
Yep.
So by 8, they're going to hear everything. So you need to talk to them first. You should do that about many more things than just sex.
Yeah.
I think people have started to absorb that we need to talk to them about sex. But if you go, hey, this transgender thing's getting out of control, you should probably talk to your kid before they interact with it so that their first defining moment in this conversation isn't some random person on the internet.
Or a Disney TV show or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
that's a whole nother can, right?
But that's how inundated the culture is with the messaging because it is everywhere.
Yeah,
so
it absolutely everywhere. And to pretend that our kids are not facing it, we're living under a rock. You know, that is not the reality. So, Travis, we've for a couple conversations now have talked a lot about the problems and kind of how we got there. Ultimately, I think we want to get to hope. Do you see hope on the horizon anywhere?
In a research basis, yes, because we're seeing a decline in identification. And one of the things I know somebody's going to grill me over, I don't want trans people to not exist. I don't want people dead.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think mental health is a real thing that we should work on.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody is valuable. They all carry the image of God, and so therefore there's something worth fighting for, right? The hope on the horizon will be if good, well-read, smart Christians will actually step into the ring. Because one of the big deficits that we see is that there's no good Christian influence. A lot of the Christian influence right now is fake PhDs and crappy certificates acting like they're on the same level. And they're just not. And so Christians aren't accepted, and I think in some ways for good reason, because they keep making things up, pretending like they're a part of the club, right? So we need more people to step up. I think we also need to come back to our roots in a lot of ways. The universities began as a Christian endeavor. So if anybody says, well, Christians, you know, in academia really should, are you sure? Be entirely serious right now, because that's where it all started.
Yeah.
Christians have the capability. For some reason, we've opted out. And I don't like that. That's why I'm having this conversation, even when this isn't my specialty in treatment, because nobody's saying anything. Nobody's informed enough or, quite frankly, brave enough. And we seem to have forgotten that this isn't our home. You're not supposed to be comfortable here. This isn't your home. So don't act like it is.
That's good. That'll
Gotta
preach, right? Exactly. Well, again, there is so much more to this conversation that we could have with Dr. Travis Thompson, but we're glad that you've joined us for this, and we want to get you connected to him. Links in the show notes. Hope that you will check that out. And thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you've not done so yet, hope you'll like and subscribe on whatever platform you've connected.